There we go. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good. You guys excited for today's topic? All right, ready. All right, so welcome to Contracts 101, Insights for Everyday and Professional Life. Oh, there we go. So our speakers today are myself, I'm Annie Delgado. We have Natalie, Justine, and Omar. They'll go ahead and introduce themselves as they cover their topics. Just a reminder, we're not lawyers, that the ones that are speaking. So quick disclaimer, anything we say here is for fun. It's not legal advice. So don't say, oh, Annie told me that I have to do this when I buy my house. So not a lawyer whatsoever. Let's go ahead and begin with what is a contract. So to read the defined definition, an agreement between two or more parties creating obligations that are enforceable or otherwise recognizable at law. So a lot of the times they're in writing and it sets forth an agreement between two parties. There's three categories of contracts. So the first one is services. When you receive a service, if you go get a massage or the example shown on the screen, medical promises, construction, and then another type of contract is a transaction for goods. So tangible goods, things where you buy something and you expect something in return, right? And the third one is contracts for sale, real property. So when you're buying a house, you have an agreement between the buyer and the seller. And then on the right side of the screen, we have some sources of contract law. You guys want to go ahead and read those. And a great segue into the third type of contract is real estate contracts. So that's what I'll be touching on today. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so don't take this advice too seriously. And the purpose of a real estate contract is it's a contract that serves as a legally binding agreement between a buyer and a seller, outlining the terms and conditions for a purchase or sale of a property. So keywords in that definition or what the contract is, terms and conditions. So whether you have a traditional contract for services out, as we kind of outlined prior, there's always going to be terms and conditions, and those are going to be the ones that you want to look out for. And there's a lot of them most of the time, but for real estate contracts in particular, you want to read all of them because you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, to, buy a house or buy property or some land. So a couple things to look out for when you're purchasing real estate is the purchase price. Is that price on the contract what you agreed to? So a lot of the times when you're buying a home, you'll submit an offer to the seller. And that should be the purchase price that you agreed on, unless there's some negotiation back and forth where the seller says, I want 10,000 more dollars, and it's a competitive market, right? So we're like, okay, let's just give full ask price, but you want to make sure that the price agreed upon is what's in your contract. And the second thing to look out for is an earnest money deposit. So if everybody went around and said, I want to buy this house, there wouldn't really be, the contracts wouldn't be taken so seriously, right? So we have to leave something tangible that says, this is mine, I'm willing to buy it, and showing that we have a real interest. And financing terms, this is a big thing. So whether you're buying all cash or you're financing a house, that's also going to have a whole set of contract, right? So there's going to be terms about how many payments you're going to make, probably around 300 or 3,000, depending on the type of contract that you get. Closing costs is another important factor. You want to make sure you want to get clarity on who's covering those closing costs. So a lot of the times you cover your own closing costs, but you can negotiate that, right? Everything is negotiable. You can say, I buyer want you seller to pay my closing costs. Just make sure that it's written on the agreement or contract that you're entering into. And then your home inspection. So that's also very important when you're dealing with real estate. So for example, when I bought my home, I made sure that I had home inspection and there wasn't too many things wrong with the home, because if you have some like structural damages or something big where if a house cost you $500,000 and you have to fix it for $300,000, is it really worth it? To me, it wouldn't be, but that's also something you want to take into consideration. And fixtures and appliances. So this is a fun one. You have to negotiate what fixtures and appliances you're buying with the home. So a lot of different states vary by what's included in the fixtures and appliances, but typically the fixtures are pretty standard. Appliances, I know that for my transaction, the stove was included, and I believe that was a dishwasher. So you can do with those what you want. If you want to buy like the furniture that's in the house, you really like it, then you can negotiate that and then include it in your agreement. So as you see, I'm saying include it in your agreement, include it in your contract, because that's very important to any negotiation and transaction. And your closing date, exciting. We've bought a home, we've spent thousands of dollars. When are we going to close? There's a lot of terms and timelines for that. Could be 30, 45 days, or 60 days. Sometimes it's faster. And that's different from the date you're moving into the home too. You can negotiate when, let's say your seller is looking for a home and they're asking for 30 additional days to stay in the home while they look for another home. You can negotiate that and you can say, okay, I'll let you stay these 30 days, but if it goes past those 30 days, then you're going to pay me $1,000 every day you don't leave the house. So everything is negotiable. And seller disclosures. So that's also important. You want to make sure that if you're the buyer or the seller, you disclose everything related to the property. All right, and we will pass it over to Natalie.
All right, everyone. Just to let you know, we are saving some time at the end for questions. So save your questions. We'll go over whatever. We'll have a panel. My name is Natalie Brizuela McLean. I am an FRL alumni, and I currently work in the realm of government contracts. So how many of y'all have had job offers or are looking to get one soon? Okay. So I'm just going to kind of go over just lessons learned. Again, I'm not an HR professional, but I've had a little bit of experience that I would like to share to you guys so you can learn from what I went through. So there are basic elements of a job offer, and it's going to include like the title and description, which clarifies your roles and responsibilities, because that's very important. You don't want to take a job and then later they expand your scope of work for the same pay, right? That's what we call scope creep. You want to be fairly compensated, and that letter is going to kind of codify what you've agreed to. The compensation and benefits should be clearly stated. So these include like your salary, any sign-on bonuses, like your medical, dental, 401ks, things like that. How many of you guys have experienced sign-on bonuses in your offers? Okay, see a couple of you. And so I actually had a student who reached out to me about a job offer that she had that I'm not kidding, it was like 20 pages long. And it had tons of terms and conditions, and she was going to work for one of the big 5 accounting firms. And so one of the offers that they gave was a sign-on bonus of, I think it was like $10,000, but you had to stay within for a year. So I don't know if anybody knows, like when you get to that, there usually is a time period of which you have to stay. If you leave before that, you have to pay it back. So typically your bonuses are taxed at like what, 60% for something crazy like that, right? So you're not getting the whole $10,000 in your paycheck, but if you leave early, you're responsible to pay them that whole $10,000 back. So that's something like you guys look out for in your sign-on bonuses. So if you decide to like, I just want to be here for a year and then I want to go, you want to make sure that you either try to negotiate out your sign-on bonus and just be like, can you just give me a higher salary? Like that's a negotiating tactic, or don't spend the sign-on bonus or just stay the year, the duration. So another thing that comes up is like the probation period. You want to know if you have a probation period. California is an at-will employment state, so you want to know, do I have 3 months probation period or 6 months probation where they can just let you go, right? Didn't work out for us and they let you go. That's important. Any termination clauses in there, again, California is an at-will state, so this doesn't necessarily apply unless like, you know, you get put on like a performance plan. So like confidentiality and intellectual property clauses, which are going to be your non-disclosure agreements, because most companies will require you to sign one. They want to make sure that you're not taking their proprietary information and sharing it with their competitors, or taking their stuff and using it for your next role. And for all of you technical people, like the engineers in here, scientists, whatever, you really need to watch out for who owns any inventions or creations of your work while you are working under that employment. So if you create something, you want to make sure that you have rights to patent if you can. So those are things to definitely look out for. Any restrictive covenants, this is usually for more senior like people, career people, where maybe they're a director of something at this company and they have non-compete clauses, so they can't go to a competitor and have the same job for a duration of time. Or, you know, like a new company buys out the company and they don't want the general manager anymore, so they'll put a clause in there that we'll take you, but you can't compete because we don't want you to take our business space. So that's kind of an example of a restrictive covenant. The biggest one is workplace flexibility. Now, I don't know about you all, but I love to work remote. Like, who wants to be butts in the chairs? Anyone? Not me. So right now with how it kind of turns, you know, we're seeing a lot of more going back to the office for the sake of butts and chairs. And if you talk to a recruiter or a hiring manager and they're telling you, yeah, you can have a hybrid schedule, make sure that's in your offer letter. Because if it's not in your offer letter, you're going to say, oh, well, this was our agreement. And then like, oh, well, we don't really offer that anymore. And so you have nothing to fall back on and you're kind of screwed. And if you want to be remote, then you need to get another job. So conflict of interest, this is more so making sure that a lot of companies don't want employees doing outside activities that can compete. Like I do government contracts, so it would be a conflict of interest for me to go be a consultant working with like direct competitors or something in the same realm of contracts that like we work. So you'll have ethics offices, you know, tell you what's up about that. Let me see. So this is just like a very generic title. It doesn't offer letter example. It doesn't have like everything, but you can see it has like the job title, the reporting structure, the salary, the acknowledgement of how long you have to accept the offer. It usually gives you like, you know, a couple days or a week to do that. Your starting date. Starting date's also very important. So make sure that you guys get that in writing as well. Another thing is like relocation packages. So if they're going to offer you relocation, make sure that that is in your offer letter. And so from there, I'm kind of going to segue to different things that you can negotiate within your offer. So obviously salary is number one. And you might get pushback just depending on how you guys sell yourself. But again, one of the ways you can help, you know, bolster that is negotiate the sign-on bonus. So I had a company where it's like, okay, well, we can't pay you that salary, but we can make up the difference with a sign-on bonus and it'll keep you whole for this time. And to me, I agreed to that because I was trying to get the experience they were offering me. It was my foot in the door as a people manager. And so I went from individual contributor to people manager. And so in theory, I took a pay salary hit, but the sign-on bonus made me whole. So all I had to do was stay there for that time I was whole. and then take it and go get paid. Another thing is like your benefits. You can negotiate that sometimes. One of the biggest things that I like to do, because I really enjoy my work-life balance and having a life outside of work, is negotiating extra paid time off or accelerated paid time off. You know, they might not be flexible to give you an increase in your initial salary, but they might be open to giving you more days off or an accelerated time off, which means like for the last job I was at, I came in and I was accruing vacation at the same rate as somebody who had been there for 5 years. Like, I don't know about you, but like if you go to a new job and you're starting PTO at the bottom, like it takes forever to get that PTO accumulated. And now it's not divided as a lot of places as sick and vacation. It's all just one. So you use it. Again, flexible work arrangements where, you know, to some people, salary might not be the big ticket item, right? They want work-life balance, and maybe I'll take a little less pay to have full-time remote or a hybrid schedule. So those are things that you can negotiate. Professional development is another great example. For me, I'm involved in a contracts management professional organization that they have conferences. And if y'all know, like conferences are very expensive. Like I want that knowledge, but I don't want to pay thousands of dollars for it. So it's in my employer's benefit to send me to this, pay for it. I bring that back the knowledge and I utilize it within my job role. So that's something that you can also kind of negotiate in there. And then, like I said, relocation assistance. If you are moving, especially this, you see this more for technical people, not so much business people. If they want to relocate you, you can, you know, work around and try to get more assistance within that agreement. Work equipment, if you work from home, you can ask them to buy your monitors. Not every employer will do that because it's your choice to work from home. That's another thing. And then something that you really should make sure that you guys cover is your performance review and raise schedule. Because if you're taking an offer thinking like you're going to get an opportunity to have a raise every year, like don't do that, because that doesn't happen. So it's very important to understand, what is your performance review like? Is it annual? Do we get cost of living increase, or do we get merit increase? How does this work? And can I factor this in and kind of hold you accountable? And then the last one is like a severance package, and that's usually more for like senior people who will take it in. If we let you go, then you need to negotiate this when I leave. Like you see that with all the banks back in the day, they have the, what are the golden parachutes where they like got let go. So it's kind of really what I wanted to touch on for these types of things. Keep these in mind as you go out and look for jobs, as you negotiate. There's a lot of things you can negotiate into, and we'll have room for questions after, but who's next? Justine? Okay, we'll pass that on to Justine. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I feel like I'm at the Oscars right now. My name is Justine. I graduated from Cal Poly in 2020. It's hard for me to remember because it was in the midst of the pandemic, but graduated in 2020 from the College of Business, and I minored in contracts. I currently work at Northrop Grumman, an aerospace and defense company within procurement. And I just want to share a little bit of my professional experience that I have and how it could probably relate to some of you guys taking this experience that I, am sharing today and kind of seeing how it relates to a possible future situation that you guys may come across. But again, like Annie said, we are not lawyers. None of this is legal advice that we're giving, just shared off experience. So one of the first things that I wanted to touch upon being and working in procurement are purchase orders. So if you guys do not know what a purchase order is, it's basically a legal document that the buyer sends over to the seller to request goods or service. Now, basically being within procurement, we procure several commodities. It can be something that we're servicing, parts that we're buying, and things like that. Just based on the commodity itself, you're going to have a lot of different aspects of the statement of work that are going to go into the purchase order. And once accepted by the supplier, and this is a typo that I made here, it's not just they, but both parties, seller and buyer, are legally bound to the PO. So I do make mistakes, and I did catch this after I wrote it and submitted it. So making sure to note that both parties are legally bound to the purchase order itself. So again, you just want to make sure, from my experience that I've had, is that you're laying out everything that you're doing in the purchase order. You're laying out the quantity. How many are we buying? What is the unit price? Are we getting a price break because we're purchasing more? What are some of the delivery dates? What is the schedule? What does our program need? So I work in support of a classified program. We have some drop dead deadline dates that have to be met. And if they are not met, then it could potentially impact the lines, which if people aren't working on the lines, what does that mean? They're going home and it's costing us money. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our suppliers accountable to the contractual dates that they have agreed upon. Remember, contracts, if you're agreeing upon something and you're putting it in writing, you are bound to it and you are accountable to deliver to the contract itself. We also want to list some technical things like delivery address, things like that. Anything that is going on with, in my case scenario, drawings for any of the parts that we have, things that the engineers are laying out. Again, it's not any communication that happens beforehand with engineers and suppliers is not coming into effect unless it's put on the purchase order itself. The PO itself also provides traceability. So change order, right? Let's say we've already conducted the purchase order itself. Now we have a change that needs to be made, whether it's engineering, a drawing, we want the part configured differently. We have dates that are changing. Maybe their sub-tiers are, the suppliers that our suppliers are working with are not delivering to their dates for X, Y, and Z. Pricing that's changing. Maybe we have to provide customer furnished material now. Maybe the supplier isn't able to manufacture the part or to source the part that they initially thought that they were going to be able to get and to meet their contractual date. So now they need the help of us in order to fulfill their needs, right? So what does that mean for us? Well, if we're not sourcing it directly from them and we're providing them with material, now we get a price break. Now we have a difference, a change to the contract itself. So you want to make sure we're documenting that onto the purchase order, because just because we're saying things does not mean that it's, again, coming into effect and it's not agreed upon or accepted until it's in writing and it's accepted by the supplier. It also just overall sets up the standard and it keeps parties accountable, right? So if, like I said before, if we have a purchase order and we have dates that we're putting, if we have unit prices that we're putting, if we have things that were executed at proposal phase that are coming into the contract now, we want to make sure that we're communicating with our suppliers, and we want to make sure that everything that is happening is constantly flowing within the contract. It is open to discussion, and what I mean by that is, of course, we're going to have calls, meetings, things that are going to happen, but we're making sure that we're always coming back to what the purchase order is stating. And if it doesn't state it, then we need to make a change order to ensure that it is going to state it on the contract. And again, I keep saying purchase order, but the purchase order itself is just a standing contract that is in agreement with the supplier. So some of the things that I kind of wanted to dive a little bit into more were the terms and conditions of the contract. So is the supplier agreeing to our standard terms and conditions? Are they negotiating? Do they not want to accept our standard terms? Like Annie said, when she was going into the example of purchasing a home, there are a couple modifications that she was making, and redlining documents in order to give her 2 cents of some of the things that she wanted included within her purchase of her home and the contract. If we are going to negotiate, which in my experience has taken months with some suppliers, I think I was negotiating terms and conditions for up to 12 months. So it was just a lot of back and forth, stating, we want this clause, we don't want this in there, extracting information, putting information, and just reviewing it and going over it. So just kind of setting the standard of whose liability it is, kind of what is going on if X, Y, and Z were to happen. Here are the terms and conditions that we have to abide by. We also have some additional clauses. Again, I work in aerospace and defense, so it is government funded for our program. And what that means is we have DX and DO rated orders. And that kind of just applies to the government saying, hey, this is our money, so we want to make sure that we're tracking this in a timely manner, and you are communicating to your suppliers that they have either 10 days, 15 days, X amount of days to get back to you with acceptance of purchase order, the contract, within a timely manner. So again, all of these terms are keeping our suppliers accountable. It's basically just enforcing that accountability and binding. Also, inspection, invoicing. If there's anything that there is particularly we're wanting in a contract, we're adding it to the purchase order to make sure that we have flow downs of procedures that we're following as well. And payment terms, so whether our supplier is a small or large business, we do have payment terms that are kind of set in stone. There are sometimes terms that are negotiated beforehand, and those can be either worked into the purchase order itself, or again, they can be negotiated, things like that. I actually have a story where I had a friend, we'll call him Bob. I don't want to give his name out, even though no one here knows him, but let's say Bob. Bob has a salsa making business. He's a small business, and he's basically looking right now to get into wholesalers and distributors, to get into Whole Foods, things like that, right? He has a lot of organic ingredients. Now, Bob is working with a supplier that he distributed all of his goods to already, and his net payment terms set up were 15, which is 15 days. 15 days comes by, Bob doesn't hear anything. Okay, 20 days, nothing. Bob, I'm sure, is calling him up. Hey guys, where's my payment? You guys said that I would have payment in 15 days. It's what you agreed upon. 30 days, okay, now what's going on? My first question to Bob was, what did the contract say? Well, we didn't have a standing contract in place. We had an invoice. An invoice, okay? So there's no legally binding agreement that says that they have to pay you within 15 days. No. So what do you think Bob does? Where's my payment? Oh, sorry, Bob. We're a little backed up right now. Come next week. We'll have something for you. Week goes by. Where's my payment? Oh, Bob, sorry, our director's out and we don't have, giving them the runaround. And I'm sure you can see how this story goes. You have to have a contract in place, a binding agreement that says if, in instance, his supplier, doesn't matter what industry you're in, I'm giving my experience of aerospace and defense. He was in the food industry. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Some of you guys I know in here may be looking at starting a business. Keep that in mind. Keep it in mind if that you're going to have any type of goods or services that are going to be sold or exchanged, that you have standing agreements in place that a seller and a buyer have to abide by. Those are some of the main key points here that I just wanted to share. Lastly, into my professional experience here, freight on board, FOB, so origin or destination, right? We're exchanging goods. When is liability transferred is basically what this goes into. Is it transferred when the seller is done with what they're completing? Is it transferred, the liability transferred when it gets onto the truck to come over to Northrop Grumman to get delivered? Is the liability transferred when it hits our docks? Those are kind of some of the things that or we as a company just try to establish before anything, before anything comes up. But we just want to make sure that those are put in place to have as set in stone for liability and reasons on that as well. Okay, now I'm going to bring up Omar here, and he's going to go a little bit into remedies of breach of contracts.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Good? All right, so my name's Omar. Brief background. I am also in the aerospace industry, boring, blah, blah, government, right? I'm also in law school, so I don't sleep at all. So instead of talking about contracts or what it is, I'm not going to test you, or am I? I may, right? Winner gets a gift at the end, so we'll see. If whoever gets it wrong pays for the meal. Deal? All right. Now, what's the point of it? To protect yourself, right? Essentially. I'm not going to go into legalese because I read that all day and I don't think that's how you want me to talk to you. Essentially, a contract is a promise between one party and another. So that means anyone here can join a contract tonight, right? So I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Instead of giving you a real one, I'm going to go do my own thing, all right? So I'm going to say names because they're over here and you know them. Natalie and Justine are students in this scenario. Minors, remember that as well. So that means they're younger, right? Okay. Now, Justine graduated. She has a laptop she no longer wants to use, or she's making a lot of money. I'm going to make some more. Natalie is just starting out. The laptop that Justine is selling is cheaper than what's on the market. Let's say $1,200. Okay, it's a pretty nice laptop. Mac, new, cleaned. Okay. Now they agree on a price. They agree on the transfer. Now let's say 2 days before, Justine gets a little greedy. She finds someone to buy it for $1,400. What can she do? Well, essentially, if you get in the nitty-gritty, she can sell it to someone else. The economy would like that better. It works out. But Natalie is just starting school. She needed that laptop, right? She didn't get it. Grades drop. She's kicked out of school. What can she do? Complain, not do anything, right? Figure it out. Or take her to court. Take her to court, right? For what though? To make her whole. Now there's so much in it. It's amazing. Yeah, you'll see it right now in a second. You want to take this as advice? Yeah, it's up to you. But I wouldn't recommend it. But if you make a profit, I want my cut. So essentially, there's like more than one way to get damages. What is damages? Money. Who here likes money? Yeah, wait till you start making some. Yeah. So essentially, in this realm of contract law, they're not going to make you rich. They're going to make you whole. What does that mean? It depends. So who says that? Every single lawyer you've ever met. So I don't need to quote it. As you can see, any lawyer, pick them. They probably said it. It depends. But I'll tell you why. Depends on the scenario. Depends on what role you're doing. Depends on how hurt you are. The damage. You were damaged, right? Let's go back to our hypothetical. What happened to Natalie? Kicked out of school. Grades dropped. Okay. Now, how do we make her whole? You get a good lawyer. Yeah, we're going to get her some money. She could have graduated, potentially made this much, but didn't. Where did it start? Justine got greedy, right? That's where it started. So go after her. For what? Well, here's a couple of options. You have consequential, incidental, nominal, and a few others where, I don't want to read them. You shouldn't have to read them. So yeah, anyways, essentially, she is going to get covered. Again, if she wins, depending, right? If she wins, for that laptop. right? The promise of that laptop. Now, let's say Natalie, in another hypothetical, decided, I'm going to buy another laptop, but now the laptop costs $600 more. Guess who's going to pay that difference? Justine. Now, there's a formula, and that's something you don't have to worry about, but get a lawyer, right? There's a saying that a man who is his own lawyer as a idiot for a client. So think about that. If you want to go this route, make sure you get some legal advice and you go that way. But essentially, what the law is doing here is making you whole. Not going to make you rich. But if she would have been, let's say, an engineer, what's the average salary of an engineer had she graduated? It's up there, right? So what's the average of what Natalie could have made? Well, that's what she's going to be compensated with. Yeah. Now, here's another scenario. Same too. How we're going to flip it. Natalie's going to throw a party. Natalie's not old enough to buy alcohol. But guess who is? Justine. She asked her, can you do this? You know, I'm sure, I see a lot of people looking down. Don't worry, not a cop or a prosecutor yet. Now, party comes along. Justine's too drunk to go get her own alcohol. Breaks that promise. Question. Can Natalie sue? She can't. It's illegal, right? You can't buy one. That's another, it's a trick question. But just know that you can't sue. That's why drug dealers, when their deals break, they don't go to court or call the cops, right? They have to be binding if we recall from the first slide, correct? So back to the other one. Now, let's say that now Justine, who was the seller at this point, right? She was selling the computer, is ready to buy it. We're flipping the script here. Natalie decides she doesn't want it anymore. Found it cheaper somewhere else. Is that her right? Sure, but she broke a promise, breached her contract, technically. You want to get technical. So in essence, what can Justine do? Get that profit back. Yeah, get a good lawyer. This is what you do them, right? It doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be. Nope, doesn't. Not in California. Not in California. And there's a couple slides over here. It was. Well, not anymore. And it depends on the time of performance. Right? And if she's up to 500, then she's only getting 500. California's like that. So I should have said my school is in New York, so I only know New York law. So it's not really helpful to you. But I do have a couple slides that you can read at, and they're pretty basic and interesting. At least I think so. You can sue pretty much for anything in California. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm serious. So back to this hypothetical. Now the seller was damaged. She lost her profit, right? And in that meantime, guess what? It gets even more creative. She had more than one laptop to sell. So now she can get double the profit. How? Since I didn't sell that laptop to you, I only sold one instead of two. Now I can sue for both, right? Essentially, it's not making you richer. Just keep that in mind, but it will make you whole, right? Remember the formula, math, it's basic math, but it's the reasoning behind it, okay? Now, let's say another scenario, same one. The formula comes around, court says there's no profit, but someone was still damaged. Can she still get compensated? What do you guys think? For what? Remember, this only makes you whole. This isn't a tort, where you can make money for hurt feelings, essentially. No. But the court does have this little damage called nominal. Now, what does that mean? To go to court, I don't know if any of you have, there's court costs, there's attorney fees, or you just want to say, I was right, you're wrong. You can do that. Nominal damages, if you win, right, for the non-breaching party, the victim, essentially, keep it lay terms. This victim can now take those nominal damages, use them for court costs. However, for attorney fees, which is probably the highest, right? Not always. It depends. Okay. So if that was in the contract, or if you had again, if it's written, doesn't have to be, especially in the state. It depends where you go. A lot of you guys are smart. You probably won't be in the state. You'll sued for everything. You sneeze too loud. But essentially, there's a way to make you whole. What we really care about, right? But is that it? No. there's ways around it as well. You, not only money, sometimes, and it depends on every case by case, a little harder, get a really good attorney, you might even get what's called punitive damages. But that's not related to contract law. It's a tort, it's complex, and I don't even know it myself. I'm still reading about it, but there's more. So essentially, what is the point of it? I'll give you a metaphor, the carrot and the stick. What's the carrot? You complete your contract. Win-win. What's the stick? you're gonna make me whole. You hurt me, I'm gonna make it right. So that's why. Now, I do have more slides, but very legal, incidental. That is actually, I had to reference it properly or I'd be in trouble because we're being recorded. And consequential, here's what it is. I will say this, if you're the seller, I know this much, you cannot get consequential damages. I'll let you guys read it because it's pretty brief. What do you guys think? Any takers? I'll let you read it first, right? Sorry. What about online? Oh, but they can Google stuff. That's cheating. Never mind. Anyone? Why do we think that this won't apply to sellers? Essentially, do you want to explain more on that one? You're on the right route. You just said services. Okay, so I should have clarified, and we kind of skipped over the initial one, but there's three types. Services being one. What else do we see? We see transaction in goods, and we see real property. Okay, now I'm talking about transaction in goods. Okay, so that's different, but you are right. There's a way to get, it depends. The essence, right? But as you can see, here are some examples. Medical promise to cure, what does that mean? I'm a doctor, I said, I guarantee I'm gonna save your life. You die, ooh. Now the word guarantee didn't do it, but it's a promise that it's gonna be executed, right? How do you make you whole? How do you value someone's life? Unfortunately, there's a way, but that's a dark story that I don't wanna talk about right now. Read about it if you wanna go to law school. But essentially, there's a famous case going on this route, and see we're going on a tangent now, but you're right. When it comes to consequential, you cannot, as a seller, be compensated for that because I'm going to put it in lay terms as best I can. Your only method of being whole again is your profit, right? You might have cost to keep the product in this, but that's already, it's a fixed cost. What does that mean? You're losing that anyway. This damage, this breach of contract is not the reason why you had to pay that. So it's important as well. And do you want to tell your answer? Because you're right. You want to repeat your answer? You got it right, essentially. They can be compensated, right? The profit, right? So you were on the right track, but essentially, an incidental, maybe I should go back to incidental, right? Let's read that one. What does that entail? Why can the seller and the buyer? And this is UCC, which applies to California. It's slightly modified. This is New York. Again, I'm learning in New York State, but it's very similar. So now reading this, why do you think? I'll give you a second. If you don't understand, it's fine, but you can tell it's split, right? There's a buyer and a seller clause. Now, again, that would not have been if the breach didn't incur, right? So again, I don't know if I'm even taking accounting or what, but there's costs that you already have to pay anyway. That's not the breaching party's fault, right? It wasn't Natalie or in the other scenario. Well, it was the other scenario was illegal, so that didn't matter. But there's costs that as a seller, you already have to account. You can't get those back. It's your problem, right? You already had accounted anyway. So go ahead. Yeah, question. All right, let's do it. It's not hypothetical. They agreed. They promised, right? You can. So once that agreement is in, you're locked in, right? So now I was promised something, the profit, whatever that may be. Guess what I'm going to say? It depends, right? It depends on the formula, depends on your attorney, depends what you can prove. It's not what you know, what you can prove. But essentially, as a seller, right, you're also damaged if they don't buy it, right? But I lost money in this trade. If I had more than one laptop, I could have sold two instead of one, right? So things like that nature. Now, let's say another hypothetical in this, that in order to sell this laptop, you had to pay for marketing fees. Was the breach from the other party the reason why you paid that money? No, right? So you can't get that back. In essence, just remember, make you whole again, regardless of which side you're on. And for attorney's fees, I know it's a bit of an eyesore, is what I was told, but I didn't expect you to read it, honestly. I barely read it stuff, and I'm being tested on it pretty soon. So, no, you cannot get attorney fees unless, as you can see in the bottom, if one, between the parties contain a specific provision allowing the plaintiff to recover attorney fees in an action to enforce the contract. But this was oral, right? Handshake deal. Not recommended, but can't get your attorney fees back, right? And I don't know many attorneys who probably want like $10 in return anyway, so get a pro bono one, maybe someone who's starting out, or just read this formula and make sure the numbers add up, okay? But again, if you get nominal damages, why would you get that? There's no profit, there's no loss. Let's say they do the math and you come up to zero, but I was right and they were wrong. The courts will still make you whole. You had to pay for these court fees, right? That's a loss, either party, you'll get that back. So don't hesitate. If you have a right, you've lost something, if you feel time to bring out the stick, no more carrot, bring it out, okay? Now, these were here just to, I know there's no time, and just, this is the actual code in California, which I was reading last night. It's pretty interesting. As Natalie was mentioning, there's a couple loopholes, right, that you can get around. As we were talking earlier, some are written. Do they always have to be written? No. Handshake deals will do it. Now, statute of frauds is a good one because you'll get more money because now it becomes a tort. So you can bring those together. Again, gotta love this court system. So I'll let you guys, I don't know if we can share it or not, but again, you can Google this. I wouldn't recommend Googling. Make sure it's from an official site. Go to the law library, it's free. Knowledge is power, right? I don't know if there's any law books here, but look this up. California Civil Code 1619 through 1635 applies to all and many. And I think that's, yeah, this is just something I thought was pretty interesting that I'm never gonna forget now, at least while I'm here in California. So you can use it as you like. And we'll have more questions. Thank you. And we're back, so we're doing questions up here, sorry.
Questions for the audience? Yep, go ahead.
It depends. Again, I was talking about goods, right? Remember those three types? A service is different. Now it goes into, I don't know if we can still move the slides. If we want to go to the first one, that'll probably help me. I'm visual, so, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. But are we talking a service?
Yeah.
That's different. So services now fall under what is called, no, not that one. Common law. I should know this, but Common law pretty much is another court's decision that is binding. What does that mean? That the court has to follow it. Yeah, but again, it's not always binding. It can be persuasive. But in reality, if you're in California, you start looking at previous court cases. And what was that decision? You still get compensated, but now it goes a different route. So I was talking specifically to the UCC, which means the Uniform Commercial Code. Again, it's binding in all 50 states except Louisiana. So do not buy anything in Louisiana. Do not start a company there unless you're ready for the remedies. They like the French law, I don't know. But does that answer your question? You can, but again, it's just now you need an attorney. And services, I wouldn't recommend them as a handshake deal that you want to get in writing. Because what does that mean? It's so vague. What did you promise? A transaction in goods? The easiest way I can write that one is goods, tangible, movable items, right? The laptop, pick it up, transfer it. Services, it gets a little messy. California, no, though. You'll be fine in California. Just make sure. I'd recommend doing that in writing, nonetheless.
Hello. Hi. Say you have a contract for like a contractor to do a renovation for your house, and you have a set time that you had expected to do it by. Do you like wait how long do you wait after that time? Do you wait until it goes into that 1 year, or do you just?
I'm gonna let Lorena answer this because she just went through a whole house remodel and she experienced this exact thing. She's the president of our alumni chapter.
You asked the question and I cringed. So yeah, like Natalie shared, I went through, my husband and I did an addition on our home. It was supposed to take 6 months. And I think it ended up going like 9 months. We ended up moving out of our house to try to speed up the process. And only to find out that we had left in vain and the project had nearly came to a stop while we were gone because we were not there overseeing what was happening. So, again, very stressful. I think it's been the most stressful situation I've ever been, where I'm like waking up and I'm wanting to throw up just thinking about, I'm going to have to talk to my contractor. So what we ended up doing, is I went through the contract. I was bringing up, like, again, going back to your terms and conditions, like what's in there, and basically going through and bringing it up to them of, this is the date that we've met. And again, when we started having these meetings, we were still within, it was before the period had been, the period of performance had been breached. So at that point, we ended up having weekly tag ups to figure out, okay, what's being done during this time? How much longer do you have to go? And what are you doing to meet that, that goal, whatever it is that you're trying to do? There were, again, you have to also remember there's environmental factors that are out of your control. So if it's just, raining on your project, clearly that's not gonna get in time. So you have to, account for that time lost and applying towards the end of the contract. But really it's a lot of just getting on top of them, like not physically, but not literally, but really just staying on top of them and making sure that you're meeting milestones and that you're holding them accountable to that. And once you start, what I found was the best way to get it done was not paying, when I was getting invoiced, not paying the full amount because of, again, and you have to start tracking these things. Like if you're getting charged for window installs, but not all windows have been installed, or there's an issue with, how they were installed, or you have to really start looking at these things and you withhold payment. When you withhold payment, you will see how quickly they start moving to try to get that money. So that would be my number one. Go back to your contract, look to see, what you can, hold them accountable for. And withhold payment whenever you can. You have to be able to justify why you're withholding and pay whatever, is sensible. And at the end of my contract, we both agreed that it was better for us to finish the contract just to get out of each other's hair. Because I was in pain and my contractor was in pain. But really, you have to start really keeping track of your own contract and your own project to make sure that if they do go over, you get it in, within time so that you don't want to wait for the project, for your period of performance to be over when you finally start hounding them, be like, hey, what's going on? When is it going like, no, you need to start that beforehand. And make sure that if it is going to go over, that it doesn't go over by too much. And again, keep in mind of like, the environment, like environmental factors that are out of your control, and be sensible. And you have to negotiate and figure out what's going to be best for both parties at the end of the day.
Only because I read, as you can tell, I'm taking contract this semester, but so you said, do you have to file the case at the date that they didn't complete their contract? Or I just want to make sure I understood your question.
I guess like if it's past the period of performance, at what point do you enforce consequence? I don't know like how.
The second they break it. So if you were promised a delivery this date of whatever, is it services or goods?
Services. What do you
Okay.
mean? Yeah, services.
Okay, did you know beforehand? Ah, okay, so the day you were promised delivery wasn't happening, they breached their contract, start suing. But if you knew, so this is where it gets tricky. If you knew beforehand that they were not going to complete their contract or their promise, you have a duty as a buyer to mitigate. What does that mean? You have to start looking for a remedy, another way on your mitigate. How do I make these damages less? Doesn't mean you have to follow with them, but you do have to make yourself known, or you can't make the damages bigger than what they could have been, right? That's against you now. So in your case specifically, once they breach that contract, go after them. I'll keep it vague like that because I don't know details, and that's all I'll say.
And where does that statute of fraud come into play?
Well, again, I'm in New York, so it's a little different. But again, if we're going to go to the slides at the end, I don't know. So I wouldn't say frauds, but just start 1619 California Civil Code all the way to 1635. And if you can't find it online, which I probably wouldn't trust that source, I'm sure there's a law book here with that exact law. Now make sure it's still active, hasn't been overruled. Get a lawyer. Get a lawyer.
Thank you.
I just want a quick, go ahead.
I think you touched on it earlier, but what strategies work for keeping suppliers accountable? I think this would be good for Justine.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we kind of enforce or just kind of make sure that we have in play is a weekly meeting with our suppliers. Right now, personally, I'm going through, it's called a return to green plan. So what that means is that my supplier has not been meeting their contractual obligations, and they're on our bad list. They're on a very bad list as to if they do not up their game, they're no longer going to be working with our program. And our program provides them a huge amount of money, annual revenue. And some of the things that we just try to make sure that we're having is, like I said, communication, keeping those weekly meetings. Are they slipping dates? Why are they slipping dates? Is it due to their sub-tiers, their suppliers? What issues are they having? Ask questions. I think something that's a good thing also to take away from this is asking questions. If someone comes back to you and says, well, this is what it is. Why? Why is it that way? What have you done about it? What resources have you looked into? What are my solutions, not just a problem? And I think that's a really good thing to help keep suppliers or anybody accountable, whatever industry you guys are in. You ask questions and you dig through things so that you come up with solutions. I can't just go back to my program and say, well, my supplier slipped their date 3 months. Okay, Justine. Well, what does that mean? It's like you have to find things. So what am I doing with my supplier? Am I working with them? Am I giving, making sure that they have resources that they need? We like to call them smoke jumpers. We have engineers that will go to their sub tiers, their suppliers that they work with, and sit there until they deliver what they have. That we're not ordering
Wait,
pizzas,
They
people.
do. They do. I was on the south side of that before I went to that company, and I was like, wait, we actually have this company sitting in these meetings?
A babysitter.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, and they hired me, the contracts person, because the technical folks didn't think they needed one.
Mm.
And their company said, get a contracts person because we're sick of talking to you and we're gonna terminate your contract. And it was communication
Yeah.
and getting them on. So
Yeah.
it's a real thing, guys. It really is. You don't want to be on that naughty list.
It's their, government funding, it's government parts. If you think that they're not going to enforce it, they will. It's something that, again, this is very industry related, but just to keep suppliers accountable or anyone that you're working with, supplier relationships, being respectful is definitely key. But you're making sure that you're keeping that open communication, that relationship alive, and then you're asking the right questions. So I hope that answers your question.
And a general question too, negotiation skills. I think all of us here as college students could really benefit from negotiating.
Do you know that there's a government contracts minor at Cal Poly Pomona? One of the very few undergrad schools that has it.
Now I do.
Now you do. So all of us sitting up here took classes to get that minor with Dr. Wyatt. It's a great program. It's government based, but everything we've learned, I work for the government. We all work for the government. So, and it's applicable all across the board. But negotiations, it's a big one. You have to play your sales game and just don't be afraid of no. That's the worst thing that they can tell you, right? I was telling Justine earlier how I redlined, I take my dog to a pet hotel and it says there, if you have any additions or exceptions to make to the contract, go ahead and do it. And what did I do? I got my pen out and I started redlining their contract because if something happened to my dog, they would put it on me. And I said, if something happens out of negligence because you guys didn't do something to care for my dog, let's say he's a 10-pound Yorkie, they put him with a pit bull, something's probably going to happen. So I wanted to make sure I was covered, my dog was covered, and I put that in writing. And then also a hospital clause, if something happens to him, take him to the nearest hospital. There's no limit on the dog. He is my son. So negotiations, it's a big one, but I think that government contracts class is great for fundamentals and it's applied to everyday contracts. As you've seen, we home buying, just general
I
contracts.
did solar panels, the salespeople don't read their own terms and conditions. They expect you to gloss through them and just sign, hey, it's a great sell. And I'm like, no, I need to read these. Yeah.
Don't read it.
Yeah,
Their own
they don't read it, right? And so I'm like, I don't like this. Like, this is my solar panels and this is my backup battery. Why are you saying that I have to give my power to Edison or whatever, right? And I'm like, take that clause out. And they're like, well, we can. I said, yeah, you can. Either you want to sell me the solar panels or you don't. Either way, I don't want that clause. And so they had to go back and then they were able to get like a different version, a much nicer version that I could agree to. But like everything's negotiable because they want your money, right? So you're the customer, remember that. Hospital, like dentist, if you look at this, they always boilerplate say like, if something happens to you and you die, you promise not to sue. And I always crossed that out and I was like, unless it's due to negligence, like if it's negligible, like you guys need to like sue the hell out of these people, right? Even this, you're gonna laugh. I have one kid, we're one and done. And on all her field trip forms, they would say, you agree to not sue us if something happens. And I always cross that out and it said, unless it's because of negligence, And I tell the kid, we're one and done. You know, like, you are our only kid. If you die, I'm gonna sue, you know? And so I said, and I promise, like, I'll take you to that field trip on our own, but you can do that. You have to protect yourself, you know?
She's like, Mom, I'm just going to Chuck E. Cheese.
Now, and I'm like, what's the number one rule of contracts? So always read them before you sign them. You look at, we watch these music documentaries and how many artists have been screwed out of their millions because they signed a bad contract.
And they
right?
want to blame it on somebody else,
Yeah.
the person they made the contract with.
Yeah, so if there's anything that you take away from my perspective of this is always read your terms and conditions and don't sign anything if you do not like it.
I wanted to ask, so my grandmother got into a pretty bad, like, contractual, system with this contractor who was to do her bathroom. And he completely botched a ton of things, didn't do things the way we wanted, didn't want for things to, be met to the way we wanted. And it ended up being that my dad, brother, and I went and flew out to her, house and then completely remodeled like a ton of her house and did it ourselves because we thought the contractor did so bad. Is there a way we can go back after the contractor because he did such a terrible job and he didn't meet any standard and he left it in shambles and we had to completely redo it ourselves?
Hell yeah.
Our
State was
aspiring
this in-
lawyer.
What state? You say you flew out? No, what state?
State?
Yeah. New York. Ah, right in my head. It's on purpose. So essentially, yes. To keep it short, yes. So she's going to be made whole again. Right now, she mitigated, which was smart, but that cost is not going to be taken into account with what she should have paid. But if she paid you less, that's a savings. So you have to cut that from what you can get. But you should have got more. And essentially because, but look, what may or may not, she's allowed to make herself whole. What's the loss here? She had to now go look for you, and you probably didn't do an amazing job because that's not your role. That's okay. But she made an attempt to mitigate her damages. But essentially, whatever was in agreement, that's what she's going to be compensated for. Now, what the value is of a proper bathroom, that's up for the court, for the jury. Let's hope it doesn't get to that. Essentially, what happens is they're going to settle it, but they play hardball. She has something to work on. And get a lawyer. They're cheap, at least depending on how much she paid. And yeah, she can be made whole. Yep. Doesn't matter if she mitigated to fix her situation because that's her role that she's supposed to. Yeah.
Even if you mitigated, found the different solutions, alternative to the contract to be able to like offset it, can you basically still go after that person because of their lack of, you know, contractual obligation?
What do you mean lack of contract? What do you know?
Well, no, they said that.
So that's not a lack. You have a contract. You broke it. Yeah, that's your obligation. You promised it. So again, uniform commercial code. She can be compensated properly. And even if she went out, she's supposed to. So good job for grandma. But and you got some money for that too. I guess it's a good win-win. Yeah.
I felt really bad. My dad did too. So we wanted to try and, you know, make it as right as we could. We needed that bathroom for both my, you know, grandmother and grandfather.
Yeah.
And so we did a really good job in terms of remodeling it. And I think it's better than what the contractor could have ever really done.
Okay.
I've been working, like woodworking, I know I'm plumb, I know how to do a lot of different things.
Mhm.
Personal skills from my dad. God bless him. But I love to build it, and we enjoyed it. I mean, it was a lot of work, and we ended up extrapolating to a lot of different areas of the house and did tons more. But it was really a sour feeling in our mouth because
course.
my grandmother had been basically scalped in terms of how much you paid for the contractor, and we worked and did it for a fraction of the price and did way more to her house.
She will be made whole. And the amount, and again, that formula, right? But I will say, be keen on statute of limitations. That was a year ago. Just make sure how long you're limited to a certain time. I got to go back and read it. And
Advice coming from, like, contract background people, anything good or service you're gonna get 3 quotes. I always tell them, I'm getting 3 quotes. Give me your best and final offer now, because I'm not gonna have go backs after. And I always tell them I'm a contract person, that's my profession, and give me your 3 quotes, then I will get that. So always go for 3 quotes. I'm big on referrals, like if I know, like, you know, somebody just had, you know, something done, and you like them, okay, like I'll get a quote from them, you know, maybe like a family friend, I'll get a quote, I'll give everybody an opportunity, but like at the end of the day, it is very business. So even if you're going with a friend or a family member, make it contractual and earn it.
Forgot to mention, actually, now that she made a good point, your contract is now services and goods. So what happens here is a hybrid contract. Now the court may either split the good with the UCC and the services under common law, or you could say the good outweighed the service and they'll go with the UCC. Just something to keep in mind when you actually talk to someone and you don't, what is he talking about? Just if they don't bring that up, go to someone else. That's, yeah.
And it's funny, we went to two people for the contract, and one of them was a referral from our church, and she just, I don't know, I believe she was a bit gullible to believe this person would be super good at what he does and this and that. And I don't know, my dad was delegating it with her. We could have gone with someone who would have done a lot better.
Yeah.
And we know that family and we trust them, but I don't know. It was a bit of a mistake there, but you know, you live, you learn, as you know, as you figured too.
And I'll just add something real quickly because we're talking about home contracts. So definitely, like Natalie said, get multiple estimates because you'll get your low baller, you'll get like your super excessive that is just trying to get the profit. You want to get somewhere in between. The other thing is, I think I heard you say when you were first sharing your story that it wasn't up to code. So if you know, and trust me, I learned a lot about just toilet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you were going through your project, because as an owner, you also have to do your own homework and your own research. So if you think that things are not up to code, look into what code is. And if you find out that it's not, then start looking at other experts to try to figure out, okay, and hopefully pro bono, and be like, hey, is this up to code? Like, what are the measurements to be up to code? And if you truly do find that whatever was done and it's not, find out what it's gonna cost you to get it, and they pay the difference. Or they come back and do the service for us.
Yeah, no, we're not.
Yeah, so that's the things to think about, before touching it. Sorry, okay, we have a.
You said it choice, it's just the good and service, is it because of like the building material plus the labor?
Exactly. So that becomes a hybrid, and reality, if it's in another state, they're gonna go common law and UCC. I'd really recommend using UCC because, uniform commercial code, sorry. It's just binding, which is, they have to follow that
Right.
ruling. But when it comes to both, up to the court, they want to keep it one, or split, good, and labor, which will probably get more of a compensation on labor. But then you need attorneys because they're gonna have to persuade on your behalf, advocate, and say, this common law, this language.
So let's say I run like a, I don't know, e-commerce business or something and I handle shipment myself, if I'll drive it to you. Is it the same thing too, is like you're offering a good at like, I don't know, a t-shirt plus the service of like shipping it, just like driving it?
Are you charging for the delivery?
Yeah.
Then hybrid again.
Yeah, but it would be like the freight plans, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is, right,
Yeah.
it depends.
Your liability if you're, if delivery, if it's delivered, you're liable.
And that, and you may not get that back because, let's say you have to pay insurance for your car, it varies, it depends, but essentially, what's worth more, the good or the service? So maybe go that route, and it depends.
Any other?
Hi, I'm back. I have two questions. So I feel like it's easy to say get a lawyer, but then like outside of referrals, a lot of people go their lives not seeing lawyers. So is there like a recommendation like AVO or
Oh,
something?
yeah. There's a referral system actually that, again, I didn't know any of this either until I got involved in it. There's so many associations around you that will do it to make sure you have the resources. That's why they do it, because one, some people just like to advocate for others. That's why we have lawyers, right? But there's many referral sites that you can go to. Fortunately, the guys I know, they're going to charge you. They don't do pro bono, but they exist, right? And there's legal. Last week, I volunteered at a free legal fair in Whittier. 15 minutes consultation is all you need, right? Then you decide which route you want to take. So there's definitely resources. It's not unattainable as Hollywood makes it seem.
So Can a contract be valid even if it has the terms that violates the law? It's not.
Well, I mean, you'll see in a lot of the contracts that you do, there is a provision that says if anything in this contract is not considered like lawful, everything else stands.
That is, yeah, if that is the case, like where the contract was signed, the location, does it come to the matter? Because what might be legal in California might not be legal in other states.
Yeah,
So-
choice of law definitely matters. Choice of law.
What if the one of the signer was signing from other state and other signers was signing from other state? How would you,
Yeah,
how
it
do you
just,
decide
it
which is?
depends if the contract says, like, if we sue or if there's a disagreement, we agree to choice of law of like New York or California. And if you're silent, whoever brings a lawsuit first wins. Yeah.
That's also negotiable. I
Yeah, so
negotiated
again, it
that
sounds like it's a
contract.
more personal, but the reality is, if it depends on the fact that, let's say you're a citizen here and you have to now, it's up to the court to decide, is it a state court case? Is it a federal court case? So it varies, there's diversity of jurisdiction, it depends on the amount, it depends. So I need more context, but in reality, there's a lot of factors that you need to consider. And the simplest way is choice of law and stuff like that. But again, even that can be breached and broken by the court. So it's just about, again, it's all in the books. Civil procedure online, make sure it's an actual reference. And it's very, yeah, it's hard to read at first, but we can all do it, right? So yeah, it depends, again.
For real estate? Hi. So you said there's real estate contracts. Does the buyer draft it up? Is there a or is that like a realtor thing? And is there a difference between like a realtor the buyer gets or the realtor the seller gets? Like, how does that work?
Yes, so you can choose to have like maybe the same brokerage represent you, but that has to be disclosed to you up front. But as far as who's representing you, you choose that yourself. And again, that's negotiable. How much are you going to pay them to represent you in the sale of a home or a purchase of a home?
There's actually something in there, yeah. It literally talks about the limits on real estate.
Do you want to give the upcoming? No, the upcoming event, because we're gonna.
Oh, yeah, okay. Any more questions? Maybe one more question and then we're done?
We also have our LinkedIn's up here if you guys want to connect with us that way, if we didn't get to your questions or you have additional questions after that. But we have one more question. Go ahead. No?
Yeah, take a picture, but definitely make sure that you connect. Alumni, use your alumni to your advantage. But, yeah, so just, we do have an event. What's today? Today's the 5th, thank you. There's an event, we have a speed mentoring event coming up on the 18th. It's not our event, but we're supporting it. If you haven't registered it, take advantage of it. I believe it's gonna be during the day, if I'm not mistaken. And am I lying? It's from 6 to 8. No, speed mentoring. It's in the evening. Okay, I was lying. So speed mentoring is that's the. Yes, thank you. So come get information over here, but definitely highly encourage you to do that. You get to speak to multiple alumni in whatever time you want to dedicate. So there's that. We also have the mock-up interviews coming up that's the 18th. Wait, hold on. Let me grab one of these. No, okay. For the etiquette dinner, I don't think that the registration is closed yet, but disregard. Next year, look out for the etiquette dinner. It's typically around the February timeframe. The speed mentoring event, that's going to be in the evening on the 18th. Definitely take advantage of that. That's where you can meet multiple and talk to multiple alumni. And then the mock interviews is on the 25th. And that will also be in the evening. That's when if you have an interview coming up or if you don't, sign up for that. You get to practice with multiple people, again, as many as you'd like, to just get that experience, and you get that in-person feedback on the spot. So definitely take advantage of that. It's great. People have given us a lot of good feedback off of that. So if you haven't done it before, highly encourage you to do that. There is food. There is food. There's also, in the month of April, we're having the financial literacy month. So there's 4 events happening during that week. So if you're interested in learning more about negotiating salary and budgeting tips, that will be on April 14th. If you're interested in buying a home, things, and want to know what you should know as a buyer, there's a workshop on the 22nd, April 22nd. If you want to start looking into retirement planning and benefits, it is never too early, and you're never too young to start planning for retirement. Trust me.
Can we retire now?
I wish. I'm still shooting for 40. So there's going to be a workshop on April 29th. So pick one of these up before you leave. Galentine's Day? Galentine's Day. She will be here. No, but there are a lot of events that are put on by the different alumni chapters. Take advantage of them. Most of them are free, not all, but go through them and just try to attend and start networking as early as you can. Again, we're all alumni. We're always here to help you, answer questions. Feel free to reach out. Yes, we're pro bono, guys. All right, but with that, thank you. Thank you. Please give a round of applause to our speakers. Did we leave these here?